today because what I want to address is I really want to dive into the world of what it is to be the group IT manager for BS&B Safety Systems. And it's important that we really understand what you actually deal with, not just day to day, but also within your function. And of course, with the goal to share what experiences you have, what challenges you have,
Sure.
what you learn. So let's start with maybe an introduction of yourself.
Sure. My name is John Morris. I'm the Global IT Manager, CISO for BS&B Safety Systems. I suppose job responsibilities would be looking after hardware, software, telecommunications, security, both physical and virtual, as well as the 23 sites that we have around the world. So that's pretty much it. I've been with the company now, a long time.
Yeah.
I'm going on 18 years at this stage, so quite a long time in the
Wow.
one place.
Impressive.
Yeah.
2 away from 20.
I know. Scary.
And can you really reflect on like from start to finish in the last 18 years, like everything that's changed, and do you really feel it?
I mean, I remember when I first started, it was like, it was a typical manufacturing company, really kind of legacy equipment, old, barely had an email system running. I think the email system was Red Hat Linux at the time. I think barely had a PBX running, very, very old technology. I had come from a company that had more advanced technology. So no matter what I touched, I was going to look good, at the start.
It's a perfect fit for you then, coming in with all your
Yeah.
modern knowledge 18 years ago. Yeah. Funny how the times change.
Absolutely.
I think like the first thing I really want to dive into, of course we can sit here and talk about all of the challenges looking at the bottom of IT, like hardware and software and stuff. But I think for me, what's really interesting to start with is being at the top, you have this big responsibility of managing kind of the IT roadmap versus the budget. How do you experience that?
It's challenging. I mean, getting to know people, understanding, how to get your point across, what's needed. Planning is very important, of course. Looking ahead. I mean, obviously in IT, you can't plan too far ahead. I mean, 5 years in IT is a lifetime. But I mean, even looking ahead, a year to 18 months, finding out, where the company needs to go. In terms of technology, security, mobility as well is obviously a huge one, particularly post-COVID. I mean, everybody is now either working in a hybrid capacity, working from home, or traveling again. So you have to try and balance that as well and ensure that people have access to the information they need to do their job, but securely as well, and and with some level of high performance. Dealing with different entities, from financial people to manufacturing, it's different. I mean, it's trying to get, I suppose, your point across to people in the financial areas. It's about showing the risks that the company would face. If you need to buy a new piece of technology, like say a hyperconverged system, for instance, you have to show why you need it. You have to show the costs, efficiencies of it, the reliability, the scalability, how long it's going to be within the company, and of course depreciation from a financial side of it comes into it as well. Things like security products are a little bit harder, obviously, because you're dealing with something that's intangible. People understand the need. They read the newspapers, of course, and they see that this company or that company has been breached. They understand the problems that it could face. If there is a breach, what the consequences could be. It could mean a shutdown. Could mean people could have gone out of business. So it's very important that when you're selling or when you're trying to portray a technology that's required, that you do so with the audience in mind. I mean, they have to understand. Like for me, for instance, I like to choose the board meetings when I'm looking to get a new piece of technology organized, because I have everybody in the same room, from people from all over the world. So it's a perfect opportunity, to discuss it. And if there's any issues or any concerns with people, then they can be discussed there rather than trying to go back and forth with emails. So I like face to face when
Yeah.
it comes to buying something new.
Yeah, of course. And you've got all these different kinds of stakeholders in the room. How do you communicate with them? What do you find works best when you are introducing these kind of topics to help them understand, like cybersecurity, something maybe intangible? How do you do that? What works best?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's really getting to know your audience is the most important bit. I mean, everybody has different personalities, and understanding, I suppose, you have to be sure of what you're looking for. You have to have all the
Mm,
facts. You have to know why it's needed. What is it replacing something? Is it something new? If it's
mm,
something new, why is it needed? Is there alternatives? Of course, is always the question. I mean, why? What happens if we don't get this product? I mean,
yeah,
will we be vulnerable, and when will we be vulnerable? The risks are the biggest challenge, or the biggest, I suppose, motivator when it comes to security products. If you can demonstrate that there's a potential risk of not having this product, or if it makes you more secure. I mean, security is all about layers, as we know.
mm,
You can only, I mean, if somebody really wants to get into your organization, they're going to get in. You just got to make it a little bit more harder for them. That's what
yeah.
these products do. For me, I suppose the best money I've ever spent in security products has been cyber awareness training, because your people are your biggest uh, problem when it comes to security. If they click on that link, if they open a portal, if they click on something on their phone, they can cause a breach, which can be very difficult to prevent, to stop, to recover from sometimes. So these are the challenges you're dealing with.
I guess that's quite an easy thing to realize to a board who doesn't really understand cybersecurity. That seems to be something quite easy to talk about, to open the door. Um, you know, an employee clicking on a link, right? That sounds like
Yeah, I mean,
something quite easy to explain.
that's the low hanging fruit. I mean, and them ones are easy. They understand the need for, it only takes one breach or one scary moment within somebody said, I almost clicked this link, or I did this, but I thought about it
Mm,
afterwards and I reported it. So fear is a big motivator. Fear is a big seller when it comes to security. It's like the insurance industry. I always relate it to the insurance industry. You buy security products to prevent, or hope you'll never have a breach, but you do them to actually protect yourself, protect your organization, protect your employees, protect
yeah.
everyone's livelihood. So it's very easy to relate it to insurance in that respect.
It's so funny you say that. Last night I was booking a car to rent when I go on holiday,
Okay.
and we were looking at that tick box at the end that says, do you want to buy insurance now, or
Arlay.
do you want to take the risk and maybe later if you decide it will be more expensive and you say, oh, okay, what is the real risk? How
Yeah.
much money will it actually cost me if something happens? And then you start to balance the risk. And I think that is definitely the way to communicate. I mean, it's also logic, right? That is the real situation.
Yeah. I
If I
mean,
don't do it now, it's the risk of something happening later.
yeah, it's been
It's real.
being preemptive. I mean, a lot of companies are very reactive still. I mean, you have smaller companies who take the risk, they take the chance, and they say, "Oh, I'll never get breached. I'm fine." And then suddenly they get breached, and I've known companies who have gone out of business because of it, because all their data
Really.
has been ransomwared, and all their data has been siphoned off. So they're compromised, and their customers then will not do business with them anymore because of that.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that's becoming more of a normal, which is a real shame.
Yeah.
But you talked a lot about kind of low-hanging fruit, roadmap management, budget management. When it comes to things like understanding what the business needs and things like vendor selection, what does this process look like for you?
Vendor selection is pretty standard, as it is with most companies. When you're looking for something, you have to identify, I suppose, the whole. What you're looking to fill, what you're looking to achieve. Then there's always a requirement to get at least three different options, or three different
Mm,
similar products that can actually satisfy that void that you have. And then it's looking at the criteria, obviously looking at cost, looking at things like setup, looking at POCs, user interface is very important, of course. Obviously training for the staff, follow-up meetings. But the biggest one for me is communication. I mean, if you're dealing with a company and they constantly communicate with you, they are constantly looking to help you to ensure that you're happy with the product. That means so much to me, because it means then that I don't have to go looking and checking things, and it gives me peace of mind that they're looking at my best interests as opposed to just trying to sell me something and saying goodbye. Whereas a lot of companies will do that. I mean, I've had companies, they're happy to get the sale, and then it's like you never hear from them again, until it's time for
Houdini
renewal.
out of there.
Yeah, until it's time for renewal, and unfortunately, that's the case. So I try to steer clear of companies like that.
But how do you know that they will be good at, fulfilling your needs?
Well, I mean, you ask the questions. I mean, you ask the questions like, what kind of training is involved? Is it included? Is it not? I mean, and you can get. I mean, and if they're forthcoming with that information as opposed to you asking it, that's always a good sign. If they come to you and say, we're going to provide you with training, we're going to have meetings. At the start, we're going to have meetings, every 2 weeks, every week. We're going to follow up meetings every quarter. We're going to look at the performance. We're going to look at the interface. We may even do retraining, every year. Things like language localization, things that they consider, if you're dealing with, people in different parts of the world, have to consider things like that. Cultural norms is a big one as well. I mean, companies, what's accepted in one country is not always accepted in another. For instance, Google isn't, or Amazon isn't, used widely in China. For instance, they use things like WeChat and all these other products, and Alibaba and stuff like that for the products. So you have to be and the Brazilians love to use WhatsApp. You gotta know the different norms. So you gotta, in order for to protect yourself, then you gotta ensure that you're taking them considerations into account. And if the company's doing that for you, then you're in a good place.
Yeah, of course, when we talk about cybersecurity and you're making requirements, you look to a tool or you look to a product, but everything you are talking about right now is not even like product related. It's very much the service around it. So that's interesting.
Yeah, well, it is a service. I mean, you're paying for a service. I mean, I know the product is part of that service and it's a recurring cost and everything else, but I think what makes companies stand out now is that communication kind of framework that surrounds what they're selling. That to me makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and then you have to. It sounds like you've got it down on how to measure this intangible thing. You already mentioned quite a few metrics already with communication and the thoughts around it.
Well,
so.
I suppose what I'm getting at is it's not always about cost. I mean, and if I went then to a meeting, full of financial people, and I said, look, here's the 3 options, they would go immediately for the one that's the cheapest. And it's my job to show them that it's not always cheapest is best. It's it's the service, it's the communication. It's also the ability for me to have to do less. I should be able to set up a new product. For the most part, I shouldn't have to do very much with it. It should do the work for me. And the company in the background as well should do a lot of the heavy lifting for me to get their product working the way it's supposed to work. Because I've seen it before where, companies have sold somebody a very complex product and it mightn't even get opened or used for 9 months because the learning curve is too big and nobody has time. So it's about that after service. It's about that continual service that's important.
Yeah, and do you look often to like potentially replacing or reviewing existing vendors or suppliers, or do you just, if it's not fixed, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing?
No, I mean, I like to keep my vendors on their toes.
As you
No,
should.
it's important because everyone can get complacent. But it depends on the vendor. I mean, if I'm buying, say, like computer equipment from a particular vendor, I always use 1 or 2 because eventually you'll sometimes just see the price creep up a bit. You say that sounds a bit expensive, and I might use, say, something like a comparison with another vendor, or even a comparison with Amazon, to see, what it would cost me if I bought it on Amazon versus what this vendor is charging. And you will see sometimes very comparable differences. Now, when I approach the vendor about it, they'll, most of the time, they'll drop their price. And, from then on, again, you'll have a steady stream of good quality. But I mean, when it comes to that kind of, vendors of that, hardware vendors, that's my best approach for that. When it comes to vendors like, I suppose, security vendors, I suppose it comes down to looking at functionality, and if the company is adding new technology, they're constantly innovating. There's new threats all the time, as we know, and there's new risks.
True.
So if the company is constantly on a learning curve, that to me is always a good thing to look for, and it's one of the reasons why I would stay with a company. If they're stagnant and they're just selling something year on year without changing it, it's probably time to look for something else.
This conversation has been extremely insightful, and I want to thank you so much, John, for your time.
You're very welcome.
For your input, for sharing with us today.
Thank you. Anytime.